Okay. Well, our normal practice, King, is to invite you to just describe in your own words what happened, and then we will take it from there and just ask questions as they arrive. So, if we can begin by just asking you, please, to tell us your experience.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Linda, and thank you for having me today at this hearing. Yeah, so back in June, 29th of June, 2023. So what I did, it was the morning. I sent out a tweet, and this tweet was uh, uh, essentially flowed from a sort of barrage of videos and pictures that I saw on the morning, I think quite early in the morning on that day, from Calvin Robinson, and it was sort of the end of Pride Month. He was sending out a number of quite sexualized, vulgar scenes of naked men in the street of our streets in the USA, but also the UK, London, and other areas. They were twerking naked. There were kids as young as 4 and 6 years old watching these scenes, and there was marches of quite disgusting uh, scenes. And what I did that day was sent a tweet, and it was a tweet it was a measured tweet. It was a biblical tweet. And it was essentially said, when did pride become a thing to celebrate? Because of pride, Satan fell as an archangel. Pride is not a virtue, but a sin. Anyone who has pride should repent of their sins and turn to Jesus, for he can save you. That's what I said. It wasn't a hateful tweet. It was a strictly biblical tweet that was referencing pride and homosexuality as a sin, because the homosexuality part followed the subsequent tweets. In my clarification tweets to subsequent ones, I stated I don't hate, because of course at this point I was receiving calls from the media and from various local reporters because of that tweet. And I had to clarify, essentially saying, I don't hate anyone, I don't discriminate against anyone, but it is my right to be able to express my Christian beliefs, and that's what I did. And sin is sin. It states it clearly within Scripture what is sin, and I made that essentially public. And then I then clarified further with a much larger clarification piece, because it was quite clear to me that people were very angry and disgruntled about what I'd said, particularly with my position as as a unitary councillor for Northamptonshire Council. So at that point, I felt the need to make it clear what I meant, the Christian position on pride and homosexuality. And I did, essentially saying we are all sinners. I'm a sinner myself. Christ came for that very reason, to save us from our sins. And clarified the position on what is not just that pride or homosexuality is a sin. There are other sins as well. Being angry in your heart is a sin, etc., etc. So I did that clarification piece. But from that point, I found myself in muddy waters. I just say, I did not expect to be in this position at this point. I didn't know how far we had come as a nation, that tweets like that were centered around biblical principles will get me to this point. So I just tweeted. I thought, right, I'm not going to stay silent anymore. I'm going to send this tweet. But I didn't think too much of it at the time. Of course, in reflection, I've been thinking about it, and it's like, maybe I shouldn't have, or whatever, but actually I stand by my convictions in sending that tweet. Anyway, that same day, later on in the afternoon, I received the first call I received was from the leader of our local council, Jason Smithers. He calls me up and says, his hands are tied. Essentially, he has to suspend me for 21 days because of this tweet, hateful comments. There's been reports and complaints are pouring in from the public in Northamptonshire, just both West and North, in place of pouring in. So he had to suspend me. CCHQ had asked him and told him, essentially mandated him to suspend me immediately for 21 days. I asked him why and what the reasons are. He couldn't give me any. He said it's just within the constitution, local constitution, he can suspend me without any reason for 21 days whilst they're investigating. From this point, I then received calls and email from Groundwork Northamptonshire. They suspended me, not suspended me, they asked me to essentially leave the board of trustees, effective immediately. That was from the Chief Executive, Kate Williams. And then I received a call from, who was it next? NHFT was the following day. So I'm going to move on to the following day, but I may come back if I forgot anybody. But the Northamptonshire Healthcare Foundation Trust, their chief executive calls me up as well. I was a partner governor on their board. They essentially say that I need to essentially leave the board as well straight away. They follow that up by email. Weavers calls me up as well. The head teacher, John. John, he also says my position is now untenable because of my comments, and he asked me to leave the board immediately as well. What did shock me again was the library. So I had a this is the Rushton Library. I had a joint police and ward member surgery, consultation with the public. So we coming together. He's the Bates Ward police officer. I'm the councillor for the area. We're going to have a joint surgery to get the public to come and talk to us. The library then calls the police officer and says that the ward surgery cannot go ahead any longer if I'm involved. So it can go ahead just him, but he has to essentially tell me to not come along. That was very odd for me. I'm thinking the library. So this sort of fed into the narrative, and that I was playing in my head that there's all this, they're connected into maybe some WhatsApp group. Again, this could be just conspiracy, but how is it they all strategically cancelled me at the same time, including the library? And then following Monday, so the weekend after all those cancellations, I thought, right, it's calming down. I didn't hear too much on the Saturday and Sunday. It was quiet, still going off on Twitter, of course, but it was quiet. But this is all the political stuff now. So all the political things, all the political positions I had, etc. I was cancelled. I was removed. I was suspended from the party, etc. From the local party, etc. But then on Monday, my sort of worst fear came to pass, because my brother receives a call. So I'm a owner and director of our company, Mega Resources. My brother receives a call from one of the commissioners of one of the Northamptonshire councils, and I'm not going to name them, but he receives a call, and they essentially say that I have to, they have to distance themselves from me. This is my brother and my mum. They have to distance themselves from me in order to continue the contract. It's quite large contract, and just to give you a bit of scale, it's a few million, couple of million, 2.4 million, and it serves around 70 to 75 care workers, reablement care workers, and some of them are international workers as well. So thinking about that and losing that contract, I did make the decision to resign, but I was forced to resign by the council through the other directors that didn't want to lose this contract, quite lucrative contract. So yeah, that happened, and I believe that's where we were up to. The Conservative Party directly contacted me, started the investigation a few weeks after, and it was led by CCHQ. Peter Holly from CCHQ was leading the investigation whilst being suspended. Through this process, after the 21 days had finished, they then suspended me indefinitely. So not just for the 21 days, it was indefinitely. CTHQ asked the local group, Conservative group, to meet. They met. Then they agreed that I'll be suspended indefinitely. And then I was doubly investigated, so by the council directly, because there was complaints coming in to the council, but also by CCHQ. So the one that concluded first was led by one of the council solicitors, and they received hate. There was a complaints that I was being hateful, etc., etc. So that that concluded, I believe, a few months after. So that was wrapped up quite quickly. But uh, I had to do the sanction at the end of that investigation was that I had to do a diversity and inclusion training, which I had to sit publicly on the teams, and I had to go through that, where they were talking about all sorts of like white privilege and you know how to, as a counsellor, include everybody. And honestly, if it wasn't for my local leader being a bit supportive, saying, oh, you know, just get it done, we'll get you back, and etc., I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done that training. It seemed like an unfair sanction. But that was it with that. And I was back on as a as a counsellor that could attend things, because I was told to essentially hide away for a little while whilst the wind blows over. And then much later, again, I could be missing some things. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happened in the interim, but after everything essentially had blown over, in about at around, I think it was no, I want to say I remember now. It seems like quite a while. Maybe February, February this year. That's when I received this complete exoneration from the Conservative Party. It could have been sooner. From the Conservative Party, essentially saying that objecting to Pride and homosexual, well, objecting to Pride is not a sin. It's not a sorry. It's not. It's not sin. It's not homophobic. Objecting to Pride is not homophobic. That's when I received that exoneration, and I was my suspension was lifted. So again, I could have missed things. This is the whole picture, and I've kind of rushed it.
Sorry, I hadn't unmuted myself there. Thank you, King. Just to get a little bit more into the background here,
Yeah.
you felt moved to tweet because you've been reading these reports.
Yes.
It was the end of Pride Month, you say. How had Pride been that time been celebrated locally? Was there a lot of support within the council for Pride events? Was there a Pride march locally?
So yeah, so there's a couple of things. I had already challenged this. So I'm sure the councillors weren't too surprised that I said something, because I'd already challenged on our WhatsApp group, the NNC group. They had changed, no, on our Facebook. Apologies, on our Facebook, they had changed the image of the standard North Northamptonshire Council picture to be having rainbows on it. And I said, what's going on here? We're not meant to be political, because Pride is political. We're meant to be a council, which is usually apolitical outside of elections. So I questioned it with the leader on the WhatsApp group, and again, I was ignored. So there were other things as well. There were, I believe, Corby had a led by the town council, had their first ever Pride March celebration that year as well, and in Northampton, but that's not part of my council. That's the West Northants. So yeah, there've been things going on locally in support of Pride.
Hmm. You're absolutely right that councils are not supposed to show any sort of partisan support
Exactly.
politically, ideologically.
You know,
So
thing
they
for
would they've been sorry.
I was just going to say it'll be the same thing for Black Lives Matter as well. They shouldn't be getting involved in that sort of thing, same as Pride.
Absolutely. Did it ever occur to you to escalate this to the next level by complaining about the council, by taking legal action against the council even?
So there was talk of with Christian Concern at the time to escalate it and take them to court, but uh, I didn't there was a lot going on at the time. I didn't choose that as a priority, but there were considerations to do that, particularly because I was dropped as the health scrutiny chairman. I forgot to mention this part, sorry. So I was health scrutiny chairman ahead of the tweets being sent out, and I had other committee positions as well. I was taken off all the committees. I was dropped as the health scrutiny chairman. This is a paid position. This is a special responsibility allowance you get for that. And the reason I was elevated to that position because I'm the most competent to do it. I've got a healthcare company, and that was quickly gone. And because of that, essentially termination of not employment, it's a position that you get given. There was talk about taking the council to court, but the leader had been quite supportive. I've seen, what he was doing. His hands were tied because it was CCHQ essentially leading on this from behind the scenes. They did not want to be seen to be leading on it in public, and hence why when I went on Jacob Rees-Mogg and other shows, they were written to and they quickly denied it. Oh no, it's a local party, it's a local group. It wasn't a local group. I saw the emails, I saw the messages, I've got them. And it's a case of them not wanting to be in public showing that they're the ones pushing this. They wanted to blame it on the local group. So the local leader, my local leader had been very supportive. So at the time I didn't want to take him to court because I think it would rest on him.
Mhm. That's quite extraordinary. The composition of the council, to your knowledge, how many LGBT members, supporters, ideological campaigners were there within the council itself?
Well, there is on the extreme left, which is your Zoe McGee's and the McGee's family, actually, and the Labour councillors. There's about 14 of them, and yeah, namely them, the Greens and the Lib Dems weren't too much, but about 14 of them within our own group. There's not a lot of within the Conservatives within our group in Northamptonshire, not West. West has got a much bigger within the Conservative Party LGBTQ
Mm.
following, but within Northamptonshire, not much were sympathetic to that political position, and a lot of them behind the scenes contacted me. Well, not a lot of them, handful of them behind the scenes contacted me and offered support. And a number of them were either Christians or they just offered support in terms of giving me a call, etc. But none of them wanted to come out publicly in support of me, apart from one councillor that's actually not on my unitary council, but it's on the Wellingborough Town Council. And the minute he did that on Twitter, that he supported me quite substantially, he found himself in prison for nine
Oh,
hours. Yes, finally, he found himself jailed for 9 hours and arrested at 8 a.m. in front of his family, in front of his two young children and his wife. Cuffed and put in the car. And the reasons they gave is because of, there were some other tweets that were hateful that he sent. But one, people are getting arrested for tweets, right? And the second thing is when they got to the police station, this is Councillor Anthony Stevens, by the way. When he got to the police station, they spent a long time interrogating him about why he supported me. They were saying they were quite apoplectic as to why he would support me publicly on this point. And so although they said that it was three tweets that got him arrested, which were one about someone burning the Quran and him saying that you can do that if you want, not him burning the Quran picture. He was referencing someone else's tweet saying if you want to do that you can. He's a free speech absolutist, this particular councillor. And there was another one tweet that apparently he got arrested for, which was a Christian preaching and a Muslim preaching. And the Muslim preacher didn't get arrested. The Christian preacher did get arrested and was treated quite aggressively by the police. And he sent a comment to Rishi Sunak on Twitter saying, is this a fair and free sort of thing? Is this a fair and free United Kingdom? Why is there not, the Muslim preacher not being treated the same? But that was apparently hateful towards Muslims. And so because of that, he was arrested. But that was these tweets that he sent was such a long time ago. These were talking last year, maybe 2 years ago, whereas the tweet him supporting me was the most recent one. And that's what they spent their time talking to him about at the police station. So although they're saying it's because of hateful comments towards Muslims that he was arrested, he was really arrested because of his support for me. But anyway, yes.
Okay, no, that's interesting. So just to be clear, he was arrested. You were reported to the police, and I just want to pick up here. I'm not sure if I got this right. You said it was the library that reported you to the police?
No, so I was meant
No,
to do
okay.
ward surgery, which is a consultation with the public. I do it. Because I'm a counsellor in two areas, in two places. I'm a counsellor for Rushden, Batesward, which is the parish council, and I'm a unitary counsellor for North Northamptonshire Council, that I'm representing Queensway and Brickhill.
Mhm.
The police officer I met in the library. He's the at a different time. He's the police officer responsible for the Bates ward, which I'm a counsellor for, that specific area of the parish. And we agreed to do a ward surgery, a ward consultation together. So they get police, they get political representation as well, so they can come in. Member of the public come in and they talk about various issues, whether it's crime, whether it's like potholes or whatever. And so we essentially were going to do a joint surgery. And he's a friendly guy. Actually, the guy's a Christian, this police officer. So we agreed to do it together. So when all this happened after the tweet, it was the library who called him, the police officer, and told him that the ward surgery cannot go ahead if I am going to be involved. That he is to essentially distance himself from me, and because of this tweet that I sent out.
Okay, but you were never arrested yourself for these tweets, even though Councillor Stevens was.
Yes, so Zoe McGee reported me to the police. I was being fed intel by the leader quite regularly about where the position is on my arrest. So I was sort of almost anticipating a potential arrest at any time. But they didn't arrest me because of I believe because it was a biblical tweet. It was me expressing my beliefs. And rather than anything else. So, but I definitely felt at the time, and again, this is just a feeling, I can't substantiate it with anything or any evidence, but I felt at the time that I was on, uh, there was something out there to try and bring me in by any circumstances, because there was a situation where I was pulled over. I've never been pulled over. I was pulled over, and this police officer was just being very, very uh, uh, unsympathetic to anything. He wanted to find something. He was checking, my license plate, my if I've got insurance, have I got this, have I got that? You can scan that yourself. You can, if you're a police officer, you can scan the license to obviously let your license plate to see if it's insured, right? You don't have to stop someone for that purpose. But he stopped me and was asking if I got this. And, he was trying to give me a bit of a hard time. I could tell in that time they were trying to find something. They couldn't arrest me. They couldn't take me in, probably because what I said essentially wasn't enough for them to do that. But for him, for Councillor Anthony Stevens, it was enough because he had done those other hateful tweets.
Okay.
That's why they brought him in.
Okay. I'm just going to ask one last question before I open it up to the others. You were suspended. You were told that this was because complaints had been pouring in.
Yes.
Was it ever, were you ever told who had made these complaints? Did you ever see the complaints? And how many of these complaints had been pouring in?
So I saw a summary of the complaints.
Mhm.
If I remember, so some of them, one of them was how this is what stuck one of the stuck out to me. How could he get to the point where he could think that was okay to send this sort of? He said it in a different way, as almost where did he get the confidence to be able to send that sort of tweet? And this sort of goes to the heart of it. They think they've done so much to silence people like me and Christians, and they find it so bizarre and so shocking that I had the guts, the audacity to actually say something. And there was a comment about that, but then the other comments were just I'm hateful. He's very bigoted. I'm targeting LGBTQ people, just different. As a counsellor, I'm not meant to be spreading hate, that different things like that. But there was a lot of them from the council perspective, and which I was privy to seeing a summary of the main themes of the complaints. But with the CCHQ allegation, I didn't get to see any. They honestly, with the CCHQ one, they just sent me the tweet and said comment. That was it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, thank you. I'm going to open it up to, I've got lots of questions, but I'm going to open it up to the others now. Robert, would you like to put your questions to King?
Thank you. Good morning, King.
Morning.
Um, According to what the information you sent us, I understand there were 7 organisations in total who cancelled you. Was the Conservative Party included in that 7?
I believe so, yeah.
You earlier named a few of those organisations. If you feel it's appropriate, are you able to name all the 7 organisations and your role within each of the 7?
Yeah,
For
sure.
the record, please.
Yeah. So let's okay. So Conservative Party member, part of the management team of the Wellingborough Conservative Association, which I was taken off from there as well. But yeah, paying member of the Conservative Party. So that's one. Two, so the council, as health scrutiny chairman of Northamptonshire Council, which I was taken off from there as well. So Northamptonshire Healthcare Foundation Trust, partner governor of that NHS trust, Weavers School. This is a school for 11 to 18-year-olds, and I was a academy governor of that school. So the library, that's one as well, and that again, that was to do with the ward surgery. Yes, of course, my own company, which I was asked to resign from, forced out by one of the councils, and of course that's the owner and well, I guess my owner title isn't taken away, but the directorship was taken off the company's house. And groundwork, that's the 7th. Groundwork, Northamptonshire, I was a trustee and chair of the finance committee within that, and I was taken off that as well.
Thank you. Given all these roles, you've said that you got reinstated within the Conservative Party. Of the other organisations, did you get any apologies or reinstatements?
Nothing at all, no. Well, from the majority. The ones I was reinstated to the Conservative Party, once I was reinstated to the Conservative Party, I was then the local leader, Jason Smithers, had now he had the backing to reinstate me as health scrutiny chairman because it's his prerogative. So he put me back on as health scrutiny chairman. I've been doing that now for a number of months. I'm I don't think I'm back into any of the rest. So NHFT, no apology, no comment, not back on there. Weavers the same, groundwork the same. The library, I just haven't gone back there to speak to them. But when I did email them to ask whether I'm permitted to attend this public, this public facility, they said, oh, of course, anyone from the public can attend, and it was that sort of conversation. But I was just sort of being cheeky, trying to see if they're still going to hold their position. I am still a shadow director of my company as I sit here in my office. I'm not listed on Companies House, and that's because there is still fear of uh, disgruntled commissioners if they were to see me listed back on. So yeah, that's the position.
Right. Okay. Thank you. You said earlier that it was decided that the investigation within the Conservative Party should be done centrally. Did you get to find out why that decision was made, that it had to be done centrally as opposed to locally?
Uh, I didn't know. I think it's because it was a high profile. I don't know. Someone did say to me, "Oh, all social media things get dealt with centrally," but that's not true because I've seen things being dealt with locally at a much lower level. So um, it was just a case of Conservative headquarters wanting to take control of this and for it to be dealt with there rather than locally. That's all I know to it. To be fair, I don't know much else.
Right. And during I think it was a 6-month period, according to the documentation you sent us, within which the Conservative Party did their investigation, how many times, if at all, that is, did they actually reach out to you personally as part of that investigation?
The Conservative headquarters, you mean? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So one, two, three, probably three times in response to our response. So Christian Concern represented me. The initial email from Peter Holly came asking for me to comment or to give my position on the tweet. We put together a comprehensive independent expert report as well as the response to the case in itself, and but then there was some inaccuracies. I think initially we asked for what the complaint is because they just sent me the tweet. So the solicitors, Andrew Storch through Chris and Legal Centre, wasn't happy with just having the tweet being, oh, you respond to this. Why did you do that? Then what were the complaints? And they didn't want to send any complaints through. So there was a bit of back and forth with that. I mean, they took weeks and weeks and weeks to respond. It wasn't a quick process. So probably a handful of times they by email, never spoke to anyone verbally or face to face.
So you said they reached out to you on 3 occasions, the party. Was it all email, just email only, or
Only email, yes.
right? Did you at any point following your reinstatement into the party, did they apologize?
No, they didn't apologize. They did exonerate me, but they didn't apologize, no.
Do you believe that the circumstances of your case, as far as the Conservative Party is concerned, sets a precedent for what how free people can speak within the party?
I think people will be very hesitant to speak things in which are not in line with what the party expects because of what's happened to me. Definitely, I think that's going to be an issue, or that is an issue. But because of what they said in the exoneration, they essentially said objecting to pride is not homophobic. So now that has set a precedent now because they have said it and they've said it publicly. through this letter, which we obviously sent out publicly through Christian Concern. So now that they've said that, they've got that position, it would actually now enable people to see that and be like, right, okay, although King was a trailblazer on this, it's now clear the Conservative Party's position on this. So it could work both ways. But I was cancelled in such a ferocious way that could prevent people, Christians or others, from speaking out, but also seeing the end product of the case. People may be, more encouraged to say things now and to speak what they want to say around Pride, because they can't now suspend someone for speaking out on Pride because they've said that it's not homophobic, and yeah.
Can we just go back a few steps? When you mentioned the 7 organisations, how many of those were paid or voluntary?
Okay.
I should have
NHFT.
asked you that earlier.
No, you're fine. NHFT was Northamptonshire Healthcare Foundation Trust, was a political position as partner governor. That was not paid. It's voluntary, as part of my councillorship. Groundwork Northamptonshire trustee, not paid. It's voluntary. Weavers Academy governor is also voluntary. Those 3. So the health scrutiny chairman position within the council, that is paid. Well, that's a special responsibility allowance. And obviously my position within my company is paid, but luckily we moved created the group payments through there, so it didn't affect me too much financially, being taken off from Companies House from my own company. And then there's the library, which is just the library, and what's the last one? I can't remember the last one that I said. It's eluded me. NHFT, Weavers, Groundwork, Health Scrutiny Chairman. Oh yes, the party in itself. Yeah, the party in itself. So yeah, that's of course not paid. I pay them.
Okay. I have one other question, and then I will. Someone else will take over. We don't want to make any assumptions about the specific impact these events have had on you. As you're a witness, we want to hear your own words on this, rather than us making assumptions, your own voice. So my question is, what's the personal impact that all of this has had on you, your immediate family, both personally and financially, if you're able, whatever you would like to say about that?
Yeah, okay. So I have to think, put myself back into where I was, and there was an overwhelming sense of disappointment with the party, because they always talk about being a broad church and having all voices represented, and what I said wasn't hateful at all. I mean, Christ is an offense, so people take an offense to the scripture. That's their that's their prerogative to take offense, but it's not their right to not be offended, and that was my position. So there was a bit of this. There was a lot of disappointment. Obviously, at the time when things were happening, when the media were going crazy, there was a frenzy, and all this was coming. There was a lot of pressure within my family, directly within my household, my immediate family, because we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know what was going to happen. We were essentially at a position where we could have lost multiple contracts, but luckily we didn't lose any. Because I resigned, but again, that had an impact. It has an impact to me now because there's still things I can't do because I'm not a listed company director of my own company. There are things I still can't do. There's relationships I can't necessarily have or continue to maintain. My main strength is my ability to network and grow and have these front-facing discussions. And I can't have that at all in Northamptonshire. I've essentially taken myself away from the scene business-wise from Northamptonshire entirely because I know that there's still people out to get us here. And obviously the impact on the business. has been significant in some ways, and this is the sort of thing that can't be proven, Robert. It can't be proven because where there is they will always find reasons to cause us problems, to cause issues, and not say it publicly and not be very transparent about like for example, we weren't due an audit, but we had several audits, and I say within this period from the tweet to now, I would say we've had about 6 or more audits from different commissioners, a lot from Northamptonshire, and they're all coming, it's like a witch hunt. They all want to find something. Luckily, and praise to God, they've not been able to find anything. And we've actually maintained our excellent status with CQC and with PAMS, ADAS, and with all the commissioners. We've never had we've not been put into problems by these audits. But my brother tells me as well, when Northamptonshire came out 3-4 months before they were meant to, they were making comments, subtle comments that alluded to myself and whether I was still around, just different things where you can't name it because they're strategic about what they're doing, but there's that underlining and feeling of they are out to get us. But as time passes, it has started to ease, but there was a lot of audits in multiple branches. It's no coincidence that soon after that tweet, our Gloucestershire branch was being audited. Our Bedfordshire branch was being audited multiply by multiple commissioners in Bedfordshire, and then Northamptonshire, every single auditor, including CQC, came out there. You're like, well, this doesn't happen. You don't have 6 audits in 1 year, unless it's a coincidence. I don't think it is. I think that they're trying to find. So there's that. You can't really say this is what they did, because they're never going to say it. But there's that underlining feeling of there's things happening behind the scenes to try and cause us problems. Obviously, it had an impact on with my wife, but she was massive support at the time. She was a support at the time, and things like that. But yeah, it's difficult to really put all of it into words. It's just. I remember the time, which was a very it was a moment of weakness. As a man, I've always, it's probably, whether it's right or wrong, I don't necessarily think it's, I don't necessarily cry. But I was moved to tears, and I did one, I believe it was the Monday when it started to affect the business. It was like this sort of feeling like, what have I done now? And of course I was trying to remain strong in God. Like, if this is from him, this is his word, and this is what I did. So there was a moment of momentary weakness. Whereas it's just, it does get quite difficult. You're thinking, because at that time there was huge amounts of media trying to cause me problems, and the articles that were being sent out about me as well, bigger this, that, comments of every councillor, and Labour jumped on it with all sorts of comments and calling me to resign and everything else. It was a difficult time, being told to hide away and stay away until it all blows over. And I'm thinking, no, why? I'm elected. Why should I be hiding away? And all that pressure is, yeah. There was a lot, Robert, at the time.
Thank you, King. I have a few other questions, but I will park them for the time being so that others have an opportunity to ask their questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Just a very quick question before I hand over to ask Ian to come in here. But the initial threat to that, if unless you were removed, the contract would be withdrawn. Was there evidence of that? Was that in writing? Was it a phone call? Was it an email?
There was, I believe they're too clever to do it in writing, but it was they called up at 10 a.m., asked for a Zoom call at 11, a Teams call at 11 with without me there, so just my mother and my brother. And bear in mind, I'm the one that spearheaded this contract. I got the assistant chief executive round the table. I believe I met her at a sporting lunch, and I told her about the services that we can provide. I championed the whole thing. I'd sent them the financial model. It was all me that designed it. So for me not to be around the table in any discussion, I was already, heart was beating, like, what's going on here? This is going to be to do with that, and it was exactly that. But it was on a
Okay.
on a Teams call, not in writing.
Okay, thank you. I suspect this is something Jamie might follow up on in a bit. But Ian, can I invite you at this point to come in with some questions, please?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, hello, King. Can I ask, did you have an expectation that your Christian family views would find a receptive home within the Conservative Party? Because I think, as you mentioned, it's a broad church, but with a range of social attitudes within the party because it's so large. But some of the views within the Conservative Party are presumably actually conservative. Did you expect a better reception?
Well, yes. So I was not expecting the Conservative Party to respond in a way they did, not for 1 minute. You've got people like Nick Fletcher, Miriam Bates, and others, and Steve Baker even within the party, and they are all quite vocal Christians. So I didn't expect my tweet to do that. To essentially, it's almost as if they gave in to the mob. And one of the things I heard at the time was from one of the people that's well connected within CCHQ and the Conservative Party establishment. So he mentioned that the LGBTQ director within CCHQ, that he was maybe, again, it's not confirmed, but he was maybe leading on this, wanting there to be something done because of that tweet, that I cannot be seen to get away with this sort of thing. So there were people feeding all sorts of things to me, but I did expect it to be more tolerated, my Christian views within the Conservative Party, and it just was not at the time.
So how much do you think the response within the Conservative Party was, on the one hand, due to the sense you'd done morally wrong, or rather fear of a powerful lobby, which people didn't want to be on the wrong side of it? How would you weigh those two motives?
Yeah, I don't think they thought it was morally wrong. What I said, I almost 100% think that it was led by people within the party. This, whether it's LGBT directors or other lobby groups within the party, Conservative Pride Association or whatever, that were putting pressure for the suspension. And putting pressure for these cancellations, and what I've heard is that they're all connected. So this LGBT and Pride, they're all connected through WhatsApp groups and things. So if someone's on their radar, that person gets put. And this, again, I've been told in confidence, so that this happens. I've never witnessed it. They put it or my picture or my name or whatever in this group, and then that it's a cancellation from everything that they're on, because someone is from every institution, procurement usually, is within these groups. So I've never seen these groups, but I was told by a trusted friend that these things happen.
Mm. Mm. Do you recall any other conversations with other members of your local party about gay pride and the LGBT agenda? Did you sense that, that other people had views about it which might have lined up with yours? Had you had these discussions at all?
Yeah, with mine, yes. I mean, I had a lot of conversations, and on both spectrums. One spectrum, whereas has got someone who is sympathetic to the LGBTQ pride movement, but a decent friend of mine with as a counsellor, I mean, he was telling me at the time, hug a gay and put a flag around you, and all this will go away. No, and then we got people calling me in saying, yeah, you know what, I absolutely agree with you. What you said is what we all want to say, but they're not saying this. And they're not saying it, but there were absolutely a number of people, I'll say about maybe 5, 6 supportive counsellors that called me up and yeah, said they stand with me, but they didn't show any of this publicly or nor even in the meeting. So if they say they're standing with me and they're supporting me, you would expect that when they met to decide whether I'm going to be suspended indefinitely, they would have decided to, well, they would have put their hands up in support of me, but none of them did. It was unanimous. So, what words are words. That action.
Can I look a bit at the word itself, homophobia? And I wonder to what extent you think that the existence of this word itself, not what it may represent, but this actual word, how much did that contribute to the treatment you receive? Because I'm thinking that without that word, it might be more difficult for your accusers to go from your statement that pride is a sin to saying you are guilty of discriminatory hatred against homosexuals, which has to be punished. Because it seems noticeable that each of the newly created words which have been created in our lifetime with the phobia suffix, we think of transphobia, biphobia, homophobia, and also Islamophobia, all these newly created words, they all condemn criticism of something that stands in opposition to Christianity. And so I'm wondering how that actually newly minted word itself contributed to the trouble you got into. Do you see what I'm asking?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I guess without that, then there's nothing they can really, pin on me ultimately. But yeah, there was this straight away. Once I sent this tweet, it was then attached to me. The subsequent tweets, the responses, the media picked this up as well. I'm homophobic. I'm somehow scared of gays or don't like gay people or homosexual people. But that's not what I said at all. So I think it did play. It did play a big part in that, in the treatment I got, because without that, I'll give you an example. For when I was reinstated, and that this is when I was reinstated back as Health Scrutiny Chairman, and I got the support of the council of the Conservative councillors within the committee. There were other members there. So Zoe McGee was there, and she was the one who reported me to the police. She's the one that that led that Corby Pride March and all that stuff. So she was on there, and this is a committee. This is a committee that we're discussing health. When I was selected by the Conservative group, of course, pre-decided, she stood up, made a massive. This again is a public meeting, so her behaviour is recorded. I'm not going to be led by a bigot in this, in this committee. I'm not going to be led by this bigot and homophobe and da, da, da. She was just banding all these words around, and and so she'll rather she resigned immediately from that committee and walked straight out. And what unprofessional! She's calling me a bigot, but she is unable to sort of see and understand my Christian views and my Christian beliefs, and there's no toleration for that there. So who's the bigot? And she made a big a spectacle of herself. But yeah, so that just shows you she didn't want to be around me because she thinks that I'm scared of gays or I don't like them or I hate them, whatever the word means. So she felt the need to resign and walk out of the meeting and not be part of the committee that she's been on since the beginning of that committee creation.
Thank you. That's all I had at the moment. Thank you, King.
Thank you, Ian. Will, do you have any questions?
Hi, thank you, King. Have you been sorry, did you say you've been reinstated to your no, you haven't been reinstated to the directorship, have you? That's right, you said that. Can you say, were you ever advised, or did you ever ask about the possibility of taking any action about that intervention from your customers, your business's customers? Was there any scope for that? It seems that that's quite a disadvantage and a discrimination that you've been subject to. Did you ever take any advice on that or look into that?
Yes, so yeah, so just to answer your first point, I'm not actually backlisted as a company director. I'm a shadow director of the company now, even now, because of still fear of losing contracts. But yes, it was discussed at great length actually by Christian Concern, the legal team at Legal Centre, Christian Legal Centre, whether to take them to court or not. And I mean, I had I had a lot of substance to the case to be able to take them to the court and to court and win. But I decided not to because of my family. Because taking them to court, of course, that they just released a new tender at the time. Well, they were going to release a new tender, and if we're taking them to court and also bidding for their tender, on this contract, because beforehand it was off the table, under the table contract. Nothing was really signed. We were just providing this service, which obviously left us more exposed because nothing's signed. So a tender was going to come out. We wanted to bid for it. Obviously, I've mentioned about these 75 jobs, as well as this big chunk of the business. So I decided to not take them to court at the time, although it was considered well.
Thank you. And more generally, have you considered or taken advice on taking any of the people who've subjected you to this discriminatory or potentially discriminatory action to court, taking any legal action for discrimination?
Yeah, so I'm not sure why we didn't take them to court. There was no discussion about it. I mean, but I'll be happy to with the likes of like Weavers or NHFT or Groundwork. I mean, I would absolutely be happy to take them to court, but there was nothing really discussed around that. We're going to send letters to them. I believe letters were sent to them. But yeah, that's that really.
Okay, and thank you. And one last question. Did you think or get any indication or have any feeling at any point during this process that you were treated in any way differently because of your race?
That's a very good point. But my truth, sorry, the truth of it is I don't think so. I don't think so. But it is nuanced because I did not want to play the race card, because I mean I was told that if I did by some people, if you played that card, they'll be softer on you. You know, they'll be they wouldn't want to steer down that way, so they'll be a lot softer. But I didn't want to play that card. I've never really been about seeing. I've never really seen color. It's just I've always been based on things I've done based on merit. But I don't think they treated me in the way they did because of my color at all. I really don't, because I think actually they would have gone a lot lighter on me because of my color. So the opposite. My friend, Councillor Anthony Stevens, he's a white middle-aged male who's more of a Christian principles. He was arrested straight away, but because of how things are, you know, he's at the most in this woke world, he's at the most disadvantaged because he's a white middle-aged male that's basically essentially a Christian, has got Christian values. Whereas for me, the assumption, I guess, in some of my circles was I wasn't arrested because I've got the benefit of being black in this wokery society we live in. Yeah, I was very much not wanting to play any race card. I don't think I was treated, I think I was maybe treated a bit better because of my color.
Thank you. So, sorry, just one quick last follow-up. So you don't think there was any sense that, because you've implied that maybe you were being treated as an example, that people wanted to make an example of you to try to prevent the kind of things that you were tweeting and saying to be done by others. You don't think that there was any sense that from anyone that they wanted to make sure that, in particular, that members of the black community were understood that this applied to them as well. You don't think there was any kind of sense that maybe they wanted that added to the making an example?
Yeah. Thinking to it, was it in HFT Weavers? No. No, I really don't. I don't think there was any of that there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I think, sorry, yeah, Will. So I think on that, it was just that they were so shocked, that some people were so shocked that I had the audacity to say something, because they were thinking that these things aren't said, particularly by councillors or political people. These things aren't said. You know, you're either celebrating Pride or you're in support of it. You don't usually get people against it anymore. So I believe there was a bit of shock, and you could see that by some of the comments. How could he be so? The word I'm missing the word. How could he be so emboldened? That was the word. Emboldened to tweet this and to comment against this community. They felt like they've got the stronghold. So they were very, you know, shocked that I could say to me. So I believe that through that vitriol, they wanted to make an example out of people like me that would say something. Not, I don't believe, because of my color.
Thank you.
Thanks, cheers, Will.
Thank you, Will. Jamie, your questions, please. You're still muted at the moment, Jamie.
Thank you, Linda. May I call you King?
Yeah, well, that's my name. Yeah.
Yeah. Rather than your surname.
Oh, yeah,
I could call you Councillor Lawal if you prefer.
No, King's fine.
You are back on the council. I mean, you are back as a member of the Conservative team.
Yes, I am.
I think you said, yeah. Looking at the documents that you have helpfully provided to us, in particular, the Conservative Party Disciplinary Subcommittee record. I don't know if you've got any of these documents with you. If not, then perhaps you can take it from me, what they say, or from your recollection. But at paragraph 13, the panel stated that they, quote, would ask the respondent to note, however, that, and then they give 3 points that they want you to note. First one is, as a party representative and councillor, he is held to a higher standard than an ordinary party member and represents his constituents. He should take care to ensure that the expression of the views does not conflict with those requirements. Secondly, the panel consider that the attitude adopted by the respondent in response to the investigation letter was unhelpful and did not assist with the disposal of the complaint. And thirdly, the panel would also note that it did not find the independent expert report provided by the respondent helpful in resolving the complaint. I just wanted to ask you some questions about that. Yeah. Leaving aside the panel's execrable grammar in using the word would inappropriately, would invites the response that is conditional. and they don't seem to do understand that. But that nowadays is quite common, particularly in the civil service. So I won't trouble you with that. But as to subparagraph 1, given that they found the complaint unproven, did the panel say what they meant by their last sentence as to the expression of your views, i.e. that it should not conflict with their requirements? Did they say what they meant?
That they should not conflict with you mean the requirements of, sorry, if you can read that last part
I will,
again.
yes. He should take care to ensure that the expression of his views does not conflict with those requirements, i.e. a higher standard than ordinary party members. What did they, I mean, yes,
Yeah.
all right, there's a higher standard than an ordinary member. And it's a statement of the blindingly obvious to say that you represent your constituents. But they then go on to say that the expression of your views must not conflict with those requirements.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
what requirements? They don't say. And what I'm asking you is, did at any point, at any time, anywhere, anyhow, any place, did they explain to you what they meant?
no, not at all. So there wasn't. They didn't explain anything of that sort. I mean, it's kind of left to the. It's quite ambiguous, right? What you're saying, higher standard. Does that mean you're not allowed to speak? You're not allowed to say anything that's. There's actually a number of my constituents in Queensway and Brick Hill. A lot of them, churches and others that are Christian. I mean, they wrote to me, they called me, they were very, very much in support of what I said, and they were very disgusted that I was being treated that way by the party and the media and everything else. So I am representing my constituents, but obviously there are other constituents as well that believe the opposite. So yeah. In terms of high standards, they've never been clear on that. I'm not sure what they mean. No one's sure what they mean. There is nothing to find to read about what they mean. So yeah, it's all up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask is it's obviously curious to say, for the panel to say, well, Councillor Lawal, we find the complaint unproven, but don't do it again.
Yeah, yeah, basically, yeah.
Don't do what again? You've just been told that it's unproven. So that's why I'm asking you the question. What did you take them to mean by that expression, if anything?
To be honest, I thought they were just trying to cover their backs. Say a mix of things. At the time when I read it, I was just I was much more just pleased that they had exonerated me, and they could put this whole thing to bed. I didn't read too much into those parts.
So and how did you feel about them saying you're not guilty, but take care that you don't say anything like this again?
Yeah, no, I didn't reflect on it too much. As I said, I just took the headline, which is objective to pride is not homophobic. I probably should have read into it a bit more, but I didn't. I really don't think they have. They have any point to saying that. They can't contradict themselves like how they did there. So I don't know what it means, Jamie. I have no idea, and I didn't read into it too much.
Okay. And then on the second point, they seem to have, well, they've said they didn't like your attitude. Did they say what they meant by the attitude adopted by you in response to the investigation letter being unhelpful?
No, they didn't like my solicitor's attitude. So one of the Christian Concern solicitors, very bullish in his approach. Good, he seemed very direct, and I like working with him. And the fact that he was asking for clarification on what is the complaint to respond to. All they did, right, was sent the tweet and said, respond to this. That was the entirety of their investigation. We had nothing. We had no complaint to respond to. So now that was what one of the biggest problems was. So what he asked on my behalf was, what's the complaints? What are we responding to? Are we just responding to the tweet? Because how can we develop a response from that tweet? I don't think it's wrong. So you're sending me the tweet as a wrong thing. If that's the makeup of your case, that sort of puts us at odds. So the reason why they've mentioned that comment is because they didn't like the way the back and forth nature of asking for clarifications. And then the whole thing about confidentiality, it was stated that this is confidential. So obviously we wanted to both do the legal, but also publicize this as well. But they have no confidentiality policy anywhere. So it was difficult to find it out. And we asked them for that multiple times. They didn't send it. So yeah.
Well, that's an interesting point you make, because if they were saying to you that this is confidential, it doesn't seem to be very confidential. It seems to have leaked to all of the organizations with which you are attached, and to the media.
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
So if they have got a confidentiality policy, it doesn't seem to be working, does it?
No.
They also don't seem to understand that it is the job of a solicitor to ask direct questions. How did you feel about that criticism? I mean, in the sense that, did you get the impression that they didn't really know what they were doing, and they didn't know how to run a panel?
Yes, it was very, very clear from the lead investigator Peter, and even his manager. I got the sense that they were just sort of dragging this out as long as possible, so it blows over, so they can come around and say this. Because if they were to now say objecting to Pride is homophobic, and they didn't, they sort of proved this case, they would cause a lot of problems for them internally, because they have Christians within their ranks. They have groups within Christian groups within the Conservative Party. So they couldn't have held that position. But then they also couldn't sanction me straight away as well. So I think they were in a not difficult position. I believe they should have exonerated me straight away and supported me from the beginning. But they were trying to waste time. This is why they responded within after a number of weeks. It wasn't a quick response to try and get this dealt with quickly. It was delay and delay and delay, and that was obviously problematic.
Yeah. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in effect, are you saying the panel were simply not competent to be able to judge these things?
Yeah, I don't think they were sufficiently, particularly the investigator. I'm not too sure about the panel in themselves. From what they're saying, they would have been fed information from the investigators. Peter Holly, his boss, I can't remember his name now, but it will be on the documents which I sent. And they would have come to those conclusions. Even the things like the independent expert report, that was a comprehensive report. I believe I sent that to you.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that too, because it was very comprehensive and full of very interesting information. And yet they say they didn't find the report helpful in resolving the complaint. Again, what did you take them to mean, and how did you feel about that?
Well, ultimately, I think they didn't maybe expect me to get a solicitor. I don't think they expected me to get, because all the things that the solicitors did, right, the challenging in terms of clarification, answer questions, the independent expert report, those are the things they dismissed and didn't find helpful. So I'm not sure what they wanted me to do, tackle it myself, probably. But I got a solicitor. So essentially, I think what they're saying to this is deal with it by yourself, and don't get legal advice, which is not what they should be doing. They should be encouraging legal support and advice. So yeah, I couldn't understand that part, because it was very comprehensive. I read it, read through it. It was independent, and it essentially put my position very clearly to them as to why I am, allowed to express myself in that way based on their own legislation. So, yeah.
So I suppose that goes to once again to the issue of their competence. I'm a barrister myself, and I one of the things that struck me was the sheer lack of competence on the part of the members of the panel who are sitting in judgment on it. The very least the Conservative Party ought to be able to do is to constitute a panel that knows what they're doing when they deal with complaints of this nature. And if they felt that getting a solicitor was unexpected, then they're clearly extremely unfamiliar with these sorts of proceedings. The kinds of accusations that have been made against you and what you've told us about how it affected you quite clearly calls for you getting legal advice. So that's very helpful. Thank you for that. In your letter of response to the email of Mr. Holly of the 10th of August, and I'm going to call that the response or your response, you refer to emails from Mr. Holly dated both the 14th of July and the 10th of August. Were these complaint letters sent to you on behalf of the Conservative Party by Mr. Holly?
No, so he never sent a complaint letter.
So what was Mr. Holly's role?
So he was the let me have a look. Just double
Well, let me help you. What you say later on, I'm going to come to this in a minute, is that he appears to be both the complainant and the presenting officer.
Yes, that's very likely. Let me just get his presenting officer. Yeah, so he's
So that seems to suggest that he was sending those letters on behalf of the Conservative Party in some official capacity.
member governance. Yeah, absolutely. So presenting officer, party organisation, member governance. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Member governance. Okay. Thank you.
Member governance. And
we don't seem to have copies of those letters. Are you happy to supply those if you have copies?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got all the copies. I can supply those.
I think it might be helpful. Yes. In the response, you note, and again, this is the point I've just made, that the complainant and the presenting officer were one and the same, namely Mr. Holly, which, as you say in your response, and I appreciate you will doubtless have had help from your solicitor in compiling that response, but that's perfectly normal. Yeah. This is an obvious breach of natural justice, as well as contrary to the social media complaint rules, which I'll call the rules, and the disciplinary process guidance, which I'll call the guidance. Yeah. And you invited him to recuse himself as one or the other, presumably the presenting officer, since he made the original complaint. Did he recuse himself?
No.
He didn't?
No.
Did he say why not?
No, I'm just trying to get back onto the email. Which email are you referring to now, Jamie?
Your email response to
what day?
The email of Holly dated the 10th of August, 2023.
Okay, let's
which in turn follows on from his earlier email of the 14th of July.
Okay. Just get into it.
And as you and your solicitor rightly point out, he can't be both complainant and presenting officer without breaching natural justice, as well, of course, as the rules and the guidance. So you quite rightly invited him to recuse himself. Yeah, you told us that he didn't.
Yeah, he didn't.
And I'm asking you, did he say why not? I think you're saying no, he didn't say why not.
No, he didn't. So his position was very much the point that we should just respond to the complaint, and he wasn't really given much by way of any explanation to anything at all. That's why I'm very confident, without seeing it, to know that he didn't accept what I. So I'm just on it. I'm just on it now. Give me a moment. So, if you just repeat the part now, because I'm on the email, I want to make sure I've got my facts correct. You're asking about whether he recused himself of being a presenting officer.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can't remember the date of your response. Are you looking at his email or your email?
So I'm looking at the 14th of of July 2023.
I doubt whether it will be in the 14th of July or the 10th of August, because your response was in response to those. So really what we're looking for, and I don't think it exists, is a response or a reply to your response, a reply in which he answers your questions.
Yeah. So that doesn't exist. No.
No, right.
Doesn't exist, no.
So all of those points that you raise in your, I think in our papers, it's headed draft letter.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you didn't send it, or that you've just supplied us only with a draft?
Let's see what I sent you. I can send you the actual one that we sent. I believe they weren't changed. It was a draft, and then I would have changed it to official and then sent it off. So I believe what I sent you was the official one without the heading being changed. But I can send
Right,
you.
okay. It's headed. The document is headed Lawal letter to council, August 2023. But the actual document itself begins draft and then is headed, Dear Mr. Holly, I write in response to your email of 10th of August, where you requested a response within 5 working days.
Oh, I see. Oh, so maybe
Although that's headed draft, is that in fact
that's the official
copy
one
of the letter that you sent?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it doesn't have a date on it, so I don't know what date that was sent. But that's the letter I'm talking about, or the email that you sent in response to his request to reply within 5 days. And you asked him to recuse himself, but clearly if he did not respond to your response.
I see what you're saying now. Right. Give me a moment. Let's get to that now. Response to yes, there you go.
So I've called that letter, which in the documents is headed a draft, but you tell us you did actually send. I've called that the response.
Yeah.
Because it sets out the substance of your defense.
Yeah.
And I think you told us, did you never got a reply to that?
No, I don't believe we got a reply to that. No. On the 14th of
which in itself seems extraordinary, doesn't it?
It does. On all the particulars of this it kind of eludes me now. I'm trying to get my bearings on this. I was heavily supported by my solicitors on this. So,
I mean, ordinarily in any proceedings, whether they're formal or sorry, go ahead. I
can send you the emails for you to go through if you wanted to, because the ones I'm seeing. So there was an email. Where the initial email where he's stating the allegations and his evidence, which is just my tweet. That's the first one.
Is that the 14th of July letter?
That's the 14th of July.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And then Pavel sends a email to them on. Let's have a look. Send it on 21st, I believe. So I send it after it's sent to me. And I believe that was around discovering the holes within the case, because there was no actual complaint.
That's Pavel Stroilov from Christian Concern.
Yes. So,
or should I say, from Andrew Storch? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and then yes, this draft response. So I'm on it now, and I see in reference to the 14th of July. This wasn't responded to, I believe. Let me just double check that. Taking a team.
Well, they eventually respond on the 10th of August, don't they?
Let me just double check.
And then they give you 5 days to respond to that, which seems
that's correct. Yes, that's it.
Which is a very short time period.
Yeah.
And then you do respond. Can you remember what date you sent that letter?
Let's double check again.
what I've called the response. Presumably it will be sometime between the 10th and the 15th of August.
Yeah. Thank you for your response on the 6th of October. So
6th of October comes later, I think.
yeah, just double checking. So that, but I do receive an email saying thank you for your response on the 6th of October. So it's makes me feel that we maybe responded. Substantive response. Yeah, so I sent this off then. Just beta. It would be first off the comments. I need to double check this.
Okay, well, listen, don't worry about that. If you are able to send us the whole run of the correspondence,
Yeah,
we won't. We will just add that if you're content. That is, if you're happy, we'll just add it to the evidence.
Yeah. So
I
yeah,
think
17th of August. 17th of August is when I sent.
I thought
yeah,
that would be about right.
August.
And although there was some later correspondence in October, they never replied substantively to your 17th of August response letter.
No. Oh, no, they didn't. No, I can't see any response to that. No.
Fine. Okay. And
thank you for sending it.
I was going to ask you what did you do about that, but presumably your answer is you couldn't do anything. You can't force them. You can't force them to respond to you.
There's nothing you can do.
You then say in the response, you note, secondly, your email of the 14th of July asserts that the party has received a complaint against me and conveys the impression that that complaint is different from your email of the 14th of July. So in other words, what you're saying is that there was another complaint against you. Was there another complaint? So far as we know, there wasn't. Did somebody else make some other complaint other than the one that you received from the Conservative Party?
Yes. So there was the council process. There was a council complaints process, which is why I had to do this DEI course. So
do you know who it was that made that complaint?
Well, members of the public. I can tell you who led the complaints.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get to that now. I want to say Kamala, but let's just get to that. Yes, so Kamala Colson Patel.
Is she a councillor or just a member of the public?
No. So she's the solicitor, the council solicitor. So she's the chief lawyer, governance and litigation.
For the council of which you are a councillor.
Yes, for Northamptonshire Council.
Right.
I've got her.
But
I've got her.
And that just to clarify, that is, in essence, though, the subject matter of the complaint is the same as the subject matter of this complaint from the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So in essence, there was no fresh or new complaint. It's all the same complaint.
It is all the same complaint. Yeah. But they had to deal with it internally in the council. People were getting.
Now that council complaint.
Yeah.
It was led by the council solicitor. And do you know who initiated that complaint? Was it the leader of the council? Was it the leader of your own group, or was it who was it? If you don't know, then you don't know.
Yeah, no. So it'll have to be initiated. There's a fly here. It'll have to be initiated.
Well, rather than just guessing, you either know or you don't know. If you don't know, that's perfectly fine.
I don't know for sure, but it would have to be initiated by the leader of the council. Because
see, the point I'm really driving at is there's a council-led complaint and you haven't been told who the initiator of the complaint is.
No, not directly, no.
which is another breach of natural justice. You should know who your accuser is,
Right.
and you weren't told.
No, I
Is that
wasn't.
right? No,
No.
okay. Now, so you've set out a series of procedural errors, obviously assisted by your solicitor. But on the face of it, it doesn't appear that the party took your complaints about procedural fairness at all seriously, nor did the council.
No.
And in the response, you further state, thirdly, I do not accept that your complaint is a validly constituted complaint under the rules and the guidance, or that it has been validly communicated to me under the rules and the guidance. And so far, what you've said to us confirms that that's the case. Both the rules and the guidance, you go on to say, require the complainant to send the complaint to the CCHR. What is that? Is that human resources?
Is that not CCHQ, CCHR?
Perhaps it was meant to be CCHQ. In the letter, it says CCHR, but I think you perhaps meant CCHQ. Not directly to the respondents. And then reference is made to the guidance, pages 4, 5, 6, and 8, and to the rules, Rule 5. You go on, the guidance envisages a process of an assessment of the complaint by the presenting officer before the respondent is required to answer. That process should be independent of the complaint and the complainant. And self-evidently, that has not taken place in this case. So on the face of it, therefore, the party does not seem to be taking this complaint at all seriously, or your complaint about the complaint and the way it's handled at all seriously. And you have questioned them about that. There's been no answer. How did you feel about that?
Well, that's the way they work. I mean, if you're as a councillor or as a political a person within the party, you know that's how they are. They can be quite incompetent with a lot of different things.
You appreciate that is most certainly, definitely not how they should handle complaints.
Absolutely, absolutely. They also handled extremely poorly, extremely appallingly from the start.
It's bad enough that they accuse you of something wrongly, but then to conduct the procedure in such a cack-handed manner simply adds to the reprehensible way in which the whole matter has been handled.
Yeah, I agree.
And I suppose it's an obvious question, but how did you feel about that? I presume the answer is not happy.
Not happy at all, no.
Right. Under the heading Allegation of Discrimination under the Equality Act 2010, this is again in your response, you make a number of telling comments. I'm presuming that this is a reference to the allegations made in the letters of Mr. Holly, dated the 14th and of July and the 10th of August, respectively. You've already told us that you received no reply to those, to your objections, procedural objections. Was there any response to your complaints about procedure in any other way? Did somebody telephone you or speak to you personally, or was it just silence?
No, there was nothing. Yeah, no, there was nothing. No, no calls at all.
And you also said in that letter that pride, the way you interpreted it, or indeed the way a dictionary would interpret it, to say that it's synonymous with the LGBTQ plus community, you objected to. But you never got a response, or did you, to that query?
What date was that? If you just
Same letter, the response. You said it's under the heading Allegations of Discrimination under the Equality Act 2010. You've raised it, you've said pride is not synonymous with the LGBTQ plus community.
Yep.
And you've explained what you understand to mean by pride. In other words, the sin of pride. But what I'm asking you is, have you ever got any kind of response from them? from the complainant, the party, or the council on that issue of what you and they understood by the word pride?
No, I don't believe I have. I'm just checking through some of my emails, and I am seeing some emails popping up. And I don't want to give you inaccurate information. So
Sure.
29th of September, there is an email from Alexander Toe or Tough. He's the member governance manager. And on this email, I mean, I could send this to you as well. Essentially, he's saying the role of the preventing officer and a member governance team. So it looks like he has responded to that. So forgive me, I can't remember Alexander's email, but I can see it here now. He references, I think, the point you just made about CCHR. But he said he take it to mean CCHQ. So I can forward this on to you so you can see their response.
Can you forward it on to the secretary?
Yeah.
Have you got Edmund's email?
Yes. I've just forwarded that onto him now, so he has that. So then there was
are there any other response letters after the 17th of August?
After the 17th of August, let's see.
We've got this one, the 29th of September. Are there any others?
Give me one moment. I think I did see one. No, I don't think there is. But if there is any more, I will send it over to you.
Thank you. If you sent that over to Edmund, perhaps Edmund can put it up on the screen.
I've sent it. I've sent that one to Edmund just now.
If you got that, Edmund, if you can stick it up on the screen at some stage, we can have a quick look at it.
I'm just checking it for it now.
Thank you.
Just bear with me.
I'll just move on with my questions while Edmund's doing that. If you can remember that particular response, does it say anything about your comment as to what the word pride means?
See. So
I think to make life easier for you, when we've got it on the screen, we'll come back to those questions rather than taxing your memory.
Yes, I've sent you 3 emails, Edmund. Now,
what are the dates of those emails?
Let's see.
Just bear with me because I want to be able to share what you've sent without you seeing other items. So I need to kind of copy and paste it into a Word document. So just bear with me.
Meantime, while Edmund's doing that, can you give us the dates of those other emails?
Yes, I can.
I should add, just so for the sake of full disclosure, your solicitors, or at least Christian Concern, were a bit reluctant to give us the full file of evidence. So that's why I'm having to ask you for this. Obviously, if you're not happy to give it, please don't feel under any obligation.
No, I don't see why not. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to be able. I can share with you now the email from Alexander Tough or Toe.
Okay, let's have a look at that.
You should be able to see it now.
Thank you. Right. Thank you for your response. And so did I confirm that they have been safely received. Apologise for the delay. Address your points you've stated in response in turn for ease. I've grouped your concerns so they can be more easily addressed. Role of the presenting officer of the member governance team. You object to the complainant himself acting as a presenting officer. I must explain that this is not the case. In this instance, the vast majority of cases rose to social media. It's the Conservative Party itself that functionally serves as the complainant after being made aware of material through a complaint. This is to say that the party presents the allegations to you relating to your social media. As per the code of conduct, a member of CCHQ staff articulates the allegations accordingly. Well, that, I'm afraid, is also nonsense. A complainant has to be a person. It states, and it's possible for the person to be a company. A company is a legal person, but the Conservative Party is not a company and is therefore not a person. It's what we call an unincorporated association, and it consists of its members. So there would have to be a person, i.e. the chairman or secretary of the Conservative Party, who would have to make the complaint, failing which there would have to be some other identified individual making the complaint. So that paragraph bespeaks a lack of familiarity with proceedings of this kind. He goes on, it states, if the presenting officer is satisfied the complaint has a greater than even chance of succeeding, they will formulate a change and present it to the respondent, who will have the opportunity to answer it. I have no idea what that means. I don't know what he means by formulate a charge. Sorry, I thought it was change. Well, that seems to be an open admission that the complainant and the presenting officer are one and the same. The presenting officer in this case, Mr. Peter Holly, and let us not forget, he wrote the letter of complaint to you, is a member of CCHQ staff, and this is the manner in which all investigations are carried out. He is not the complainant. Well, I beg to differ. He clearly is. Regardless of who brought the complaint forward, a presenting officer would always be assigned to an investigation and formulate the allegations that are said to you. In reference to your complaints on the complaint presented not being validly constituted, I must state that this is incorrect. In your correspondence, you refer to the CCHR, which I take to be CCHQ. Well, we've addressed that point. Please inform me if this is not correct, the acronym you meant to reference. The complaint against you was assessed by CCHQ and proceeded through our SIFT process as outlined in the code. The material allegations were assessed and met the threshold to investigate as decided by the member governance team in CCHQ. This is detailed in the section within the code titled How Complaints Are Investigated. This section goes on to detail the role of the presenting officer. Therefore, the pre-investigation stage of this complaint has been carried out as is required by the Code of Conduct, as well as the rules. For the avoidance of doubt, the approach that has been used in your case is a typical approach to disciplinary matters under the code. That, of course, does not mean that it's the right way to do it. And I think, in fact, they've done it the wrong way. They have not denied that Mr. Holly, who wrote the complaint letter, is also the presenting officer. They appear to have admitted the very substance of your complaint. Under the heading confidentiality, they go on to say, in relation to the alleged breach of confidentiality, I can confirm that CCHQ did not inform anyone of the investigation. Our investigations are always confidential as outlined in the disciplinary process guide that you referenced. Therefore, no breach of confidentiality occurred from CCHQ, and specifically none occurred in relation to Northampton Conservative Group. Well, you've already explained to us that, in fact, there were breaches of confidentiality, and it is simply a circular argument to say our investigations are always confidential, therefore there was no breach of confidence, is a completely circular question begging response. There either was or there wasn't. Transparency and reporting policy. Finally, the transparency and reporting policy that you have requested in an internal policy document that governs the publication of anonymized statistics. It is not for public disclosure, and therefore I will be unable to submit this to you. I would like to reassure you that it is not materially relevant to your case. Well, his reassurance is not going to answer your question. The only way he can answer your question is by answering it, and he doesn't. Next steps. I would please request that your final response is submitted within 5 working days. I note that you have submitted a defense which you may wish to finalize and resubmit. If you would like me to use the existing submission, please let me know. If you do not provide a final submission within 5 working days, I will proceed under the assumption that your existing submissions are final. Alexander Tuff, Member Governance Manager, Party Organisation, Member Governance, Conservative Campaign Headquarters, 10 Wellington Place, Leeds. So there is a response to your letter of the 17th of August, but it is not a very satisfactory one. Yeah. So let me then ask you this, and I think, in fact, we have the answer in the form of the letter. Assuming that you are right, that there were no further letters from the Conservative Party in respect of the complaint, I was going to ask, was there any specific reply to your statement that it is absurd to suggest, and nothing in the Equality Act 2010 begins to suggest, that pride events and movements are immune from criticism in a democratic society? Well, if that is the only response, clearly they have not responded.
No, they haven't. I've sent something. I've sent. I believe it was. Is it 10th of August, Edmund? I've sent you another I sent you one, but that's before this
Yeah,
email.
yeah.
Yeah, I've got one dated the just bear with me, I think it says the 17th, so that's probably the second one you sent. Yeah, 17th of August to Mr. Holly.
Yeah, and then before that, there should be 10th of August from Holly and 14th of July from Holly.
And do you want me to screen share?
No, I don't think, unless other members of the panel would like to see them. But they ought to go into the evidence,
Sure.
I suggest. So you've got 4 letters there. So far as you can remember, King, that's the total correspondence. So there wasn't a further letter after. Did you respond to his 29th of September letter?
Did I, Edmund? I've sent you the email.
I've got 3. The July. I've got 10th of August, 17th of August, and then the one we've just had up on the screen.
I think you mentioned something about a letter in October, King. Was that your letter or theirs?
No, it was them saying thank you for your response, but that was in October, yeah. So
does that suggest that you didn't in fact respond to their 29th of September letter?
I did. No, so the 29th of September letter, if you look at the dates, there may have been weekend in it. That's when they requested for me to submit again within 5 days. So the 6th of October would have been the right time to respond. So that'll be the final submission and an independent expert report that will be submitted at that time for the consideration. So there was no further responses after that.
And that 6th of October letter comes from you?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of that, Edmund?
I've got Friday, 29th of September.
6th of October.
Yeah. Just bear with me.
Let me just.
I don't believe I have a 6th of October one. At least it's not come through yet.
If you can find that at some stage, King, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, no problem.
In your response, which is the 17th of August letter, you drew Mr. Holly's attention to recent cases, relevant cases, including Supreme Court case of Lee against Asher's Bakery and the Court of Appeal case of Ngoli against the University of Sheffield. And you clearly haven't received any reply to those two in relation to those 2 cases in the response of Mr. Holly. And so far as you're able to tell, there wasn't any other substantive response at all.
There wasn't, no. I know that for certain.
And despite your reference to these very relevant cases, particularly in Ngoli, Mr. Holly nevertheless proceeds with the complaint, or as he would put it, the Conservative Party proceeded with the complaint. Did the panel ever explain, well, perhaps before I ask that question, when the panel were considering the complaint, did you appear before them in person at any stage?
No.
Or was it all dealt with on paper?
All dealt with on email. Yeah.
Right. So, so far as we can see, there was no emails, correct me if I'm wrong, in which the panel explained why they proceeded with the complaint, despite the fact that you sent them 2 relevant cases showing that they should not.
Absolutely. That's a good point. No.
Right. In the response, you make reference to the objects and values of the Conservative Party and to the code of conduct. You state, I have quoted this provision in my letter of 21st of July. So clearly there is another letter of yours in response to the 14th of July, which is the 21st of July 23. If you could also send that on to Edmund, that would be helpful.
Okay.
That's the 21st of July. And have pointed out that you had not, quote, specified any objects or values I am alleged to have failed to sustain and have not provided any evidence to identify those. I suspect this is the letter, possibly from your solicitor, which they caused them to say they didn't like your attitude, because all you're doing is asking for specifics, which they haven't provided. In particular, they have not provided you with any evidence to identify your departure from the objects and values of the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
You then go on in your email of the 10th of August, you nevertheless make it very clear that no further evidence will be adduced. So they're not producing any evidence of your departure from objects and values of the Conservative Party and have no intention of doing so.
Correct.
You then add, quote, despite a clear requirement of the code that the party's objects and values are to be identified objectively, quote, based on the relevant evidence, unquote, you have chosen to adduce no evidence to substantiate that allegation.
Correct.
You're going to supply us with a copy of that 21st of July letter. It may be that it came from Andrew Storch solicitors.
Yeah, no, it all came from me directly. So it will supply
Okay.
to then be sent to them. So yeah.
Okay, that's fine. So once again, I think it's the answer is fairly obvious, but did the panel recognize, so far as you're aware, that the complainant had not specified any objects or values that you were alleged to have failed to sustain and didn't provide any evidence?
No.
They don't mention it in their findings. And so far as you are aware, they haven't mentioned it anywhere else either, or did they? Right. And so once, perhaps you've answered this question, but let me ask it again just for clarity. Did they at any time, anywhere, any place, anyhow say why they allowed the complaint to proceed without such necessary evidence?
No, they didn't explain why. We queried it. No.
Yeah, I won't ask you how you felt about that because I think we can safely guess that you weren't very happy about it. In your response, you then state, I note that you paraphrase the provision of the code in your email, where you state, quote, the test we use to identify an object and value is objective, after which you put a full stop. Now, their full stop does not appear in the code, but it does appear in their letter. And you comment accordingly. With all due respect, this is an obvious attempt to twist the meaning of the code of conduct so as to airbrush the clear requirement which you have failed to meet to prove your case by evidence. And once again, there's no response to that, is there?
No. Their response, their full and comprehensive response, is handed by that panel decision. So to my final letter and also the independent expert opinion, that was their response. That total decision was what they said.
But I think to be fair to them, they have made a response in the 29th of September letter, or at least Alexander Tuff has. But that seems to be about it, because the hang on, the decision of the panel is very far from comprehensive.
Yeah.
We're not saying that it has to be, because it depends on how they handle these kinds of inquiries. So long as your questions were answered elsewhere, and unfortunately they weren't.
No, they weren't. No.
They don't have to go into any great detail, but all they've done is set out the party's case, which just repeats the various tweets and emails. They allege that it's homophobic, highly inflammatory, and discriminatory. And Ian has already asked you about the word homophobic, which is really an invented word, a neologism. And they allege that by posting the content, you failed to sustain and are in conflict with the purpose, objects, and values of the Conservative Party. And then when you ask them for specific evidence and specific reference to those objects and values, they haven't provided them.
Correct, yeah.
So in fact, all they say is conclusions. The panel considers that we would be wrong to conflate an objection to the Pride movement as homophobic. They don't explain what they mean by the word homophobic. I pause there to say this. The origin of the word phobic is a Greek word phobos, meaning fear. And normally the word homo comes from a Greek word meaning the same, but it has been twisted into a combination of English and Greek to mean a fear of homosexuals, whereas in reality, if you follow the etymology of words that are normally used in the English language, it would mean fear of the same, which is a word that doesn't really mean anything at all. But anyway, they do not give a definition of what they mean. They just assume everybody knows. They go on to say the panel recognized that the respondent's posts are a representation of his religious beliefs, which he is free and entitled to hold. Accordingly, the posts, which, whilst they may be offensive to some, would on balance not to be considered, they can't write English, by a reasonable and fair-minded observer to be discriminatory or homophobic per se. And then they go on to make those rather peculiar provisos in paragraph 13. So paragraph 12 is the sum total of their commentary. And it is no more than saying, this is our decision. So they haven't answered any of your points.
Yeah.
At all, even slightly. So that is why I've taken you to the correspondence, some of which, and all of which you are going to send over to Edmund to include in the evidence, to see if it answers your questions. And you told us by and large it does not, and we've seen for ourselves in the letter of 29th September.
Yeah.
But just carrying on then, in the response you further state, the only value you identify, which can be identified based on common sense or common knowledge, is the rule of law. Therefore, I understand the allegation to be that by committing unlawful discrimination contrary to the Equality Act 2010, I failed to sustain the party's value, namely the rule of law. So what you're doing is saying, well, you haven't told me which particular parts of the party's code I have breached objectively, so I'm having to do your work for you and assume that what you mean is that there's a breach of the rule of law in the sense of a breach of the statute, the 2010 statute. You then go on to say, as explained above, I have not in fact committed any discrimination, have not been in breach of the Equality Act 2010, and that I therefore deny that allegation. And as you've told us, once again, no response.
Right, yeah.
Now, if there were a breach of the Equality Act, one might have expected there to be other agencies involved, perhaps even the police. Now, there was a suggestion that that there might be a police investigation. Who was it who suggested that to you?
That it might be a police investigation. So the leader mentioned it to me when I asked him, because it was mentioned already by one of the councillors in the executive team, in the executive in the cabinet. He mentioned that the police are considering whether they're going to be arrested me. He's got the intel. I don't know how, he was an ex-police officer, but he mentioned it to me. But then I asked the leader about this, and he said that no, they're staying put for now. That I don't see a reason why they'll be arresting me or anything else. I was trying to get intel from everybody at the time. Yeah.
Can I just pause you there to ask?
He also told me who reported.
Was the leader a member of your party, or was the leader a member of another party?
My party.
So it's a Conservative council.
Yes.
Right. And who is the leader?
Jason.
What was the leader at the time?
He is still the leader. Jason Smithers.
Councillor Jason Smith.
Smithers.
Yeah. And he was the one who told you there might be a police investigation.
I can't remember who it was that mentioned it to me, but I asked the leader when I found out that there was going to be potentially an investigation. I believe it was Councillor Matthew Bentley, but he mentioned it to me. So then I was thinking, hold on a second. And so I asked the leader, and he confirmed that they're not going to be investigating at this time, but then told me who reported my case to the police.
Who was it who reported it to the police?
Zoe McGee.
Councillor
Councillor Zoe McGee, the one who embarrassed herself walking out of the committee when I was re-elected as chairman.
Right.
Calling me a bigot and homophobe.
And just for the sake of completeness, the police never contacted you, did they? So it follows that there was no police investigation.
No.
You conclude the response by stating thus: I entirely reject both the allegations you are making against me. If anything, those are your actions in this purported investigation, and you put investigation in inverted commas, and the active steps taken to induce the Conservative group on Northamptonshire Council to suspend me are themselves in breach of the Conservative Party Code of Conduct. In that, one, you have discriminated against me because of my religious beliefs and or my lawful manifestation of those beliefs. Two, you have failed to sustain the party values such as freedom of speech, freedom of religion, mutual tolerance of different beliefs and ideologies. And three, your intolerant actions against me are likely to bring the party into disrepute. Accordingly, what you're saying is, it's not you who are in breach of the code, but those who made the complaint. And you therefore say, I demand an immediate retraction of your allegations and a public apology. Well, we know that there was no retraction. And I think you've already told us that you never got any kind of apology, let alone a public apology.
No.
Did anyone respond to this fresh complaint, which I'll describe as your complaint? Did anyone in the party respond and take your complaint seriously? Because you have now made a counter complaint.
Oh yeah. No.
Did anybody bother to take that seriously?
No. Nobody. No.
Did the panel comment on it, so far as you know?
I don't believe so. If it's not in that letter, I don't believe it was in that letter. That final letter, and only one and only letter they sent me. So.
And you appreciate that you could yourself now take that complaint further?
No, I didn't know that.
Well, you could,
Yeah.
if you so choose.
Yeah.
It looks as if the party has discriminated against you on the basis of your religious beliefs. But in essence, they've not proceeded to follow up your complaint of discrimination, as you've just told us. Well, I'll ask that question so we can move on. Was there, so far as you know, any support for the complaint against you from the local community or from the local groups? By that, I mean people other than members of the council, councillors or members.
Yes. What's the name of the church now? The church within my constituency. I mean, I've got a lot of support from across the world. That needs to be said. You know, Uganda, Australia, Canada, all over. USA. But from my constituency and the communities, Veronica, I believe she's a reverend of one of the churches there. I can't remember the name of it. Also, Redeem Funds, a community group I support through my member empowerment funds, you know, to create help bags, food bags for the most deprived in my community. She was supportive, and
sorry, these are people who supported you, or people who joined in the complaint?
No, people who supported me.
Right.
Yeah.
But so far as you know, there was only one other community group that supported the complaint, and that was this church.
Oh, sorry, apologies. I thought you said supported me. You mean these people didn't support the complaint? These people support me.
Supported you, right? So there weren't any, or were there any groups or individuals who supported the complaint made by the Conservative Party?
Ah, right. I see your question.
That you're aware of, that is. I mean, there might have been some you're not aware of.
Yeah, no, none that I'm aware of. No.
Jamie, can I just come in? Where time is marching on.
Yeah, I'm nearly there.
rapidly.
I'm nearly there. Can I just ask you this? Given your experience and taking into account any knowledge you have of similar experiences by the members of the party, do you think that the party takes the issue of freedom of speech and freedom of religion as seriously as it should, in your opinion, or in your feeling?
No, definitely not. I mean, you can look at what happened with my friend Councillor Anthony Stevens. He was arrested and suspended immediately from the party, immediately, no investigation, nothing, and that was led because of my
So would you say that they're under threat? The freedom of speech and freedom of religion
within the party. Yes, that's for
Okay.
sure.
We've asked you about the police investigation. I perhaps should ask, have you contacted the police about the religious discrimination that you suffered?
I haven't, no.
Okay, well, that is obviously something open to you as well. Now, just as regards the other local authority threatening to withdraw a substantial contract from your family business, unless you withdrew immediately as a director, and as we've heard, you did in fact withdraw as a director, and I think you've told us you've not been reinstated, and you've told us why. Do you intend seeking reinstatement?
Back to my company.
Yeah.
At a later point, I do intend to, just when it's almost safe to do so.
Yeah, I understand that. So are you aware that what the other local authority did was prima facie unlawful, in that it was an unlawful interference with contractual relations, an unlawful inducement to breach a contract, both of which are unlawful economic torts, and of course discriminatory contrary to the Equality Act?
Yeah,
because the Equality Act also applies to the way in which you conduct business.
Yeah.
And that therefore you have the option of bringing legal action under those heads against that council. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I am, and I'm thinking of whether to do something in the future, but I don't know how long I can wait. So,
do you feel, just going back to the Conservative Party and your local council, that there has been an attempt to impose an ideology upon you and perhaps upon others hostile to your traditional Christian beliefs?
yes, to a degree, yeah.
And would it be fair to characterize this ideology as a secularist ideology?
Yeah, or woke, yeah.
Or woke, yeah. Just another couple of questions, then I'm done. You were sent on a diversity training course. This, I think you told us, was at the instance of the council and not the Conservative Party.
Correct, yeah.
Does that, I mean, that seems to imply that the council in some way upheld complaint against you, but there's no formal record of that, is there?
No, there isn't. So the way they did it is by sending out the diversity course for all councillors.
Oh,
So
I see.
all councillors had to do this diversity and inclusion and equality training. Yeah. So
they didn't actually instigate any kind of formal inquiry against you. They just left it to the Conservative Party to deal with it.
No, they did. They did. I've got stuff that they, also their decision notice. I've got it here, the final decision notice, which again I can send to you. But
could you send that to us as well? And
yeah.
what was the outcome of that inquiry?
Yeah, I'm just getting to that. No power. So yeah, I'll tell you their outcome response to members. So their complaint was essentially, as we know, so the decision: there is no power conferred upon the monitoring officer or the subcommittee by the Localism Act 2011 to remove or suspend a councillor from office, nor is the monitoring officer able to make a determination on allegations which would be criminal in nature. These are properly directed to the police. So, but what they have done is, the local resolution is recommended in respect of this complaint specifically, should this not have already taken place at the time of the decision notice being produced. So now this is where the DEI training was beforehand.
Right. So essentially they said, we have no power to decide a matter which on its face appears criminal, but we do recommend additional DEI training.
Yeah, so number one, the member is to remove the social media tweets, the posts from which the complaints originated. Second, the member is to undergo training on equality, diversity, and inclusion to be delivered by external professionals, and if required, supported by NNC officers. Three, the member is to undergo training on social media guidance to be delivered on behalf of the monitoring officer. And four, the member should offer a public apology through a medium of his choice. I forgot about this part. This is interesting. A medium of his choice. He may wish to consider the same social media medium he originally used to express his views, signifying that it was not at any time his intention to upset or offend anyone. And in response to complaints presented, he now recognizes that the posts made on his councillor profile caused offence to others, for which he apologizes. So yes, I mean, to a degree.
Well, on the face of it, that implies a finding against.
It does, yeah. And
was there such a finding?
Yeah. So there was a finding. Yeah. There was a
what
finding.
was that finding?
I'm just response of the member.
I think we are running out of time here, Jamie.
Well,
so
this is quite an important question,
Yeah.
Linda.
So give me a moment. This is quite a long letter. I can forward it
Yeah,
over,
if you would.
but yeah, it's quite a long response. As noticed about the
What's the date of that letter?
It is dated the 25th of September.
Right. Have you taken any steps to appeal that letter?
I haven't. No.
You might want to consult with your solicitor about that. That's all I think we can say here, because it appears we've got the impression that you've been completely exonerated, but you've only been exonerated by the Conservative Party. On the face of it, and we'll have to look at the letter of the 25th of September, you do not appear to have been exonerated by the council. They do say they have no power to decide, whatever that means, but then they appear to have gone on to require you to do things that you would only do if you'd been found in breach. Now, it may be that, like the Conservative Party, it's like paragraph 13. They've said, not proven, but don't do it again. In which case, you have a very clear and open, it seems to me at any rate, course of appeal. And it's a most unsatisfactory way for them to have dealt with the complaint. But we can't really comment on that until we see that letter of the 23rd of September. And it's not really our place to advise you, but you might want to consult with your solicitor about that.
I've sent that over to Edmund. On that, I'll just say briefly that the apology was not an apology. I did not apologize. I didn't send anything through the social media medium. I instead made my points in council with all the councillors there, and it was I did not apologize, for anything. And with the EDI training, I was doing that anyway. And they mentioned, I can't remember what else they mentioned now. It's eluding me. But no, I didn't do any social media training as well.
Okay, fine. All right, just wait there. There might be a few more questions.
Thank you, Jamie. Well, we are coming towards the end of our session. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to raise at this point before I draw the meeting to a close?
Yes, please.
Robert.
Yes, I have a few questions. They are relatively brief, King. As far as you are aware, you've told us briefly about Councillor Anthony Stevens, but separately from that, as far as you're aware, were any of your fellow councillors within the party contacted as part of the Conservative Party's investigations into your case?
No.
Okay. In the documentation you sent us, there's a reference to the standards inquiry. And can you just clarify, is that a reference to the general inquiry that looked into your case, or was that a second part to the inquiry?
No, the standards inquiry is the monitoring. That's the council. That's what we've just been talking about.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, and I've sent the email by Camilla, and I've sent the decision notice to Edmund.
Thank you. You mentioned briefly that you had support from overseas from various people. Once your suspension as a Conservative councillor was made public, I understand you then became an independent. Can you tell us what responses you received from constituents within your ward and from people within the party, both positive or negative, whether online or offline?
I mean, all over. So it was calls, it was emails. Yeah, I mean, and letters were sent as well from, again, people all across the world. It was so it started off with a lot of very angry emails. All sorts of really vile things were said to me. You know, it's what it is, and received some letters to that effect. But that must have been something like 20% of what I received. 80% was massive support from all over the world, USA, you know, Spain. It was quite odd how the reach of this. And I received letters even up until only a couple of months ago. I received a letter. They're just coming in, trickling in, but a lot at the start and still trickling in now. And loads of emails, hundreds of emails from people across the world in support.
And from within your party?
Within the party. Well, I mean, if this can be included, I did go to the Conservative conference when I was trying to get, garner support, and I met with people like Miriam Bates, does that mean Nick Fletcher as well, Lee Anderson, and a few people when Lee Anderson was in the party, and they all offered a lot of support, and I believe that's partly what led to getting that final decision notice as well. To be favourable, because that was before that was all pre that, and then they did commit, and they were written to by Tim Deppe as well. He's within those circles, I believe, and they offered their support to my case.
Okay, I have a final question. King, I understand you're part of a church yourself?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Can you tell us how fellow members of your congregation, including the leadership, responded to you when your case became public knowledge?
So at the start, it wasn't ideal. I remember talking to my wife saying, "Why I don't feel really supported by the church leadership," and the comments I was getting was, why say anything on social media like this? That sort of thing. But when Andrea got involved, when she was mentioned to the church leadership by me and others that she's supporting me, it seems that things changed slightly. I don't want this mentioned because I don't want the church leadership to hate me, but it just seems to things changed, and there was a lot of support for me. A sermon was done on this matter, and the congregation was then made aware of it, because it was spoken about, and I received a lot of support. But at the very beginning, I didn't receive much support, but as the case went on, as the situation developed, a lot of support was received, more than I would have needed. A lot. Yeah.
For those who may be viewing, just to clarify, Andrea is a reference to Andrea Williams, who is the CEO of Christian Legal Centre. Okay, thank you very much, King. Thank
Linda,
you.
I just have one very quick question, if I may.
Oh, Jamie, yes, sorry, I was trying to locate who was speaking.
Sorry to, if you're not comfortable answering this, please don't. But are you able to tell us the name of the local authority that threatened to withdraw the contract with your company?
No, I'm not comfortable with that yet. Still,
no problem. I fully understand.
Can I just have one more question, Linda? Sorry.
Yes,
Right.
please, Will.
Sorry. King, so would you say in the future, would you change the way that you, as a result of this experience, would you do things differently? Do you feel like it's had an effect that would change the way that you would express yourself on social media, or do you feel like it's vindicated you? Do you think it's would you change anything, and why would that be?
I want to say I wouldn't, but subconsciously you're going to be thinking, if I send this tweet, is this going to cause this reaction? So I guess subconsciously, yeah, I'll probably have would sort of change the way I would just tweet out or use social media. I mean, I've stopped using it as much anyway. Social media, I never really did use it as much. I'm more of a in-person conversations. I believe that has the most effect. But yeah, I would say it has this whole treatment because you start considering your family and other things and business and life, and it does have a way of causing you to not be silenced, but to be a bit more cautious about the way you say things. And so yeah, I'll say it's definitely changed something, but I'll still absolutely say whatever I need to say on social media, and maybe just not as with the councillor title on my social media, because I'm saying it now as a private citizen, rather than saying things as a politician that's hemmed to all these institutions of the Conservative Party and the council, etc. I'm not doing it based on that. I'm doing it based on my own views and my own beliefs.
And do you think that's right, that you should have to do that?
No, I don't think that's right. I think that's wrong, and I think that's part of their agenda. And this is what they've been trying to do: silence politicians that have the guts to say things. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, Ian, do you have any last comments or questions? You're muted.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, King.
Okay, thanks everyone. King, you all that you've said has really sort of pointed to the fact that the Conservative Party, which is the traditional party that maintains traditional belief, upholds freedom of speech, freedom of religion, stands for all that is British. Your testimony would seem to imply a very strong and increasing hold by the LGBT secularist groups. And now, of course, as you mentioned right at the beginning, we now have a Labour government. I mean, this is just one last question. Are you hopeful for the future, or do you see this problem growing?
Well, I think we're going to have to rebuild the Conservative Party. They'll have to rebuild, and it's just how they rebuild. If they rebuild on centre and centre left policies and leadership and these quite liberal ideologies, then we're not going to do very well anyway. I don't believe. We have to move towards the right, and so I don't know how they're going to do well. I can't see it because there's already a lot of cause of infighting, and they've clearly not seen that they've lost 250 MPs, and then they're not necessarily changing. You can't see that. So I'm hoping it gets a bit better. But if not, that's not they're not the only party. There are other parties around as well on the right that could also be where I go. I haven't made any decision yet, but I think it is growing because the infection is there within the Conservative Party. It's there, and and it's not going anywhere. So, as I say, they've got at director level of in whatever part of the Conservative Party there is an LGBTQ director, or which I heard. and there's groups within it. So I do believe it's growing. So yeah, I don't know is my answer. But those are my comments to your question.
Interesting. It sounds like you are still very much committed to this fight. So thank you so much for coming and giving your testimony today. We may possibly have a couple more supplementary questions, which we will just email to you if we do have that. But thank you. I think it's going to be a very valuable contribution to the report. Is there anything else that you want to add before we draw everything to a close, or any questions you want to ask us?
No, I mean, do I get to see a copy of the report, or at least the part that's going to be?
Yes, you will. I mean, the final report will be made at the end of the inquiry, which we envisage at this time will be 2025.
Oh, right, okay.
So in the autumn of 2025, we will be putting the report together, and a copy will be sent to everybody who has taken part. And we very much hope we lost our sponsoring MP in the last election, so we are looking for another Christian sponsoring MP. But hopefully I'm sure that God willing, we will find one. So people who have taken part will be invited to the launch in Parliament when that happens.